Welcome to Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my guest, Dan Peterson. Dan, can you tell me where you went to high school?
Sure, Diane. I went to Loyola Academy. I grew up right here in Glenview, went to the public schools here in Glenview, Lions School, and then Springman Junior High, and had the opportunity to select between two wonderful schools, Glenbrook South and Loyola Academy, and I chose to attend Loyola Academy.
How did you like the math, encouragement right there?
Well, my father was an actuary, so from an early age he encouraged me in math, and the math program at Loyola was excellent and was one of the things that really got me started in my career towards my future in mathematics.
And where did you get your bachelor's from?
After Loyola, I went on to Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa, where I studied actuarial science and accounting.
All right. And what was your first job like?
Well, as I said, my father was an actuary, and he gave me some connections, some opportunities for my first jobs working as an actuarial student. And that was really my first chance to work on using data, using numbers, using mathematics to try to represent business situations. And I enjoyed that very much.
And please tell me more about data analytics and ZS Associates.
Well, after Drake, I decided to go on for an MBA, and I went to Northwestern University to the Kellogg School. And there, while I was working on an MBA there, I met two of the professors who had just started a company called ZS Associates. And their idea was to use data to help companies make smarter decisions in sales and marketing. And today we would call that data analytics, although 40 years ago that phrase didn't really exist. We talked about building marketing models. We would build models to represent how markets worked. And so I joined, after I finished my MBA, I joined ZS Associates as employee number 4. There were the two founders, a secretary and me, and others joining as well. And spent 36 years with ZS, helping to grow the company and helping our clients to make smarter decisions about which customers to call on, which products to sell, what promotions were working, how much to charge, things like that. I spent 5 years in London starting our European operations, and 5 years in Tokyo starting our Asian operations.
And then how long, so you spent 36 years doing data analytics. Is that like more statistics and then modeling and then customer management, sales marketing? Can you tell me more about data analytics?
You've got it exactly right. So it often begins with data that's commercially available, that companies are able to buy data about markets and about customers. And then it's augmented by the customer data that the company generates itself, the promotions that they conduct, the prices that they charge, the products that customers buy, the products that customers don't buy. And we would use all that data to try to build relationships, build models about what impact promotions are having, what impact activity and decisions are having on results. And that's really what data analytics is, trying to connect cause and effect in the way markets work.
Oh, great. And then when did you join G4 Alliance? Well,
as I say, after 36 years, I decided time to move on. ZS is doing really well. We're now, from the 4 of us, we now have 35 offices in 15 countries and over 14,000 employees at ZS. So time to move on to the next thing. I was getting involved in some boards, some nonprofit boards. And one of the nonprofit boards that I was on was the Global Alliance for Surgical, Obstetric, Trauma, and Anesthesia Care, the G4 Alliance. And it's a group, it's a coalition of nonprofit organizations all around the world advocating for global access to emergency and essential surgical care. And I joined the board. At the time, there was some disruption within the organization, and the board asked me if I would step in as interim executive director, which I did. And that interim lasted for 4.5 years. So for 4.5 years, as I finished my time at ZS, I then spent 4.5 years leading the G4 Alliance, basically bringing our message to the United Nations, to the World Health Organization, to the World Bank, to the U.S. government, to other major governments around the world, to prioritize access for everyone to emergency and essential surgical, obstetric, trauma, and anesthesia care.
And tell me, like, what are the chances of people dying with, I guess, like Ebola, AIDS, cancer, versus just having not exposure to surgical care?
What a good question. And that's really what got me interested when I learned about G4 Alliance, is that in fact, every year, more people die of non-communicable diseases than infectious diseases. Infectious diseases like COVID or AIDS or Ebola. More people are dying of non-communicable diseases, many of which can be addressed with surgical care. Okay, and so each year, millions of people die and millions of lives are wasted because people don't have access to basic surgery. You know, the number one cause of maternal death, of death during childbirth, is obstructed labor and lack of access to a cesarean section because there's no surgeon, there's no operating room available to do a safe C-section. Children born all around the world with cleft lip and club foot. These are things that can be easily fixed. But if there's no access to a surgeon and surgical care, then people suffer for years, for decades, with conditions that they could be fixing. So this is really a question of priorities, of values, of really making available to everyone in the world the knowledge and technology that we all have. This isn't inventing new drugs or new cures. This is simply making the state-of-the-art available to everyone.
Interesting organization. And are you a private pilot?
I am. So early on in my career, I saw the movie Top Gun, and I decided Tom Cruise. I decided I wanted to do that. So in 1987, I started taking flying lessons right here at Chicago Executive Airport. It used to be called Palwaukee. Got my license in 1988 and started working my way up through different airplanes. Today, I'm an instrument-rated private pilot. I have 2,600 hours. I own and fly a TBM, which is a single engine turboprop, pressurized, 6 seats, 280 knots at 31,000 feet. I've taken over 150 young people flying as part of the Young Eagles program. And I've taken over 100 scouts flying to earn their aviation merit badge.
When did you start participating in the Scouts?
Well, I was a Cub Scout here in Glenview growing up, Pack 66, but I never made it to Boy Scouts. I was doing other things. And then when our oldest son, Andrew, was at OLPH school in first grade, he joined Cub Scouts there. And the Pack needed someone to run the popcorn sale. And so I volunteered to be the popcorn colonel. And that really kicked off more than 20 years now as a volunteer, as a scout leader for different troops. And today I serve as vice president of the Northeast Illinois Council.
How important is, civic entrepreneurship and leadership skills do you give to the Boy Scouts?
Well, early on in my academic career, I had some opportunities that became available to me through scholarships. The scholarships that were donated and contributed by organizations, by individuals, by corporations, and that's what made my academic career at first at Drake and then at Northwestern possible. So this idea of doing something for your community, of building a better community was important to me. Also, at Loyola Academy, we learned to be, in those days, Loyola was all boys, so we learned to be men for others. Today, Loyola is co-ed, so it's women and men for others.
Yes.
But I learned that idea that your success in life is how you can help other people. And scouting was a great way to do that, because scouting is all about creating leaders for the future in our young people able to make wise moral decisions based on their character and building those character skills. So I thought that I wanted to be a man for others. I wanted to contribute to my community, and scouting was a great way to do that.
Interesting. And so are you still part of Loyola Academy, a vice president of operations and finance?
Exactly. So last summer, I was winding up my stint as executive director of the G4 Alliance. I recruited a permanent executive director to take my place. I returned to the board of directors as vice chairman, and was in effect retiring a second time. When some of my friends at Loyola Academy reached out to me. And it was an opportunity. The CFO and COO there was retiring, and some of them thought I would be a good person for that role. And so last fall, I returned to my old high school, Loyola Academy. It's quite different now. There's boys and girls there. Yes. 2,000 students as the vice president of finance and operations.
How important is to give kids an education and a break versus public schools around the suburbs, even in the city?
Well, Loyola Academy has a great footprint. It draws kids from towns like Glenview, but also the city of Chicago, tough neighborhoods like the west side and the south side of Chicago, all the way up to very affluent neighborhoods, but also areas in northern Lake County, like Waukegan in North Chicago, that come to Loyola Academy. They come because of the opportunity, the educational opportunities. They come because of the opportunity to learn to be women and men for others, to see their education beyond an opportunity to open doors for themselves, but also ways to open doors for their communities. And so that's why I'm very proud of what Loyola is doing, and I'm pleased to be part of the organization again.
And what are your hobbies like traveling around the world like?
So yes, my family are travelers, and that started with my mom and dad early on in my childhood, encouraging us to travel domestically and travel internationally. So the travel bug caught us. In my ZS work, I worked in 31 different countries. Lived in the UK, lived in Japan, lived in the US, and traveled to 28 others to work. While doing that, I learned about something called the Circumnavigators Club, which is a club of people who've traveled all the way around the world. And so I've traveled around the world 6 times. My wife, Melanie, who's also from Glenview, has traveled around 7 times.
Wow.
And each of our kids have circumnavigated as well. So next month, the Circumnavigators Club is going to elect me the president of the club globally, which is a great honor. This club goes back to 1902. It was started at a time when circumnavigating was something that you had about a 50-50 chance of surviving alive. So now it's very safe to do, but in those days, these were adventurers, these were explorers. So it's great to continue that tradition.
And also, are you part of the Glenview Park District, helping seniors and young kids flourish here?
Well, I've been. When we moved back from England the first time, in the 1990s, I looked for a way to get involved in our community and joined the Glenview Park Foundation, which is the fundraising arm of the Park District that raises money for art projects and financial aid to people to participate in Park District programs and augment some of our park facilities. Then I moved to Japan and came back a second time looking for another way to get involved in our community, so I ran for the park board. And I won. So I served 1 6-year term, and then I ran again for another 6-year term, so I served 12 years on the Glenview Park District Board, twice as president, But then last year, just about exactly a year ago, my 12 years ended. So time to turn it over to other people to follow in my footsteps. But the Glenview Park District is really a jewel of our community. It's one of the great things that we have to take advantage of here in Glenview. So it was important to me to keep that strong and financially secure and continually evolving and growing to meet the changing needs of our wonderful community in Glenview.
And how important is to have a community focus, especially like when you move back? And I understand that you built your home here.
Right. So both my wife Melanie and I grew up in Glenview, and when we did move away first to Europe and then to Japan, when we came back, we could have gone anywhere, and we really looked at different communities, and we realized that Glenview was exactly where we wanted to be. It has so many different communities, different resources. It's a great location. There's great homes here. There's great restaurants and shops and foods and services. So we love being part of Glenview. And with that comes the idea that you need to contribute. You need to make the community better because I'm a part of it. And that's really my goal.
Nice. So like going back to Loyola Academy, how do you actually encourage students to go to school and major in math and science and sports? How is it important to have a well-rounded education, especially in high school?
Well, young people today have so many pressures, have so many challenges, and it's important for them to set their moral compass right so that they are prioritizing the right things, that they're making good decisions about their future. And I think it's important that their decisions are based on their faith, their belief, their values, and how they're going to be making the world a better place for being in it. That's actually the motto of the Circumnavigators Club, to make the world a better place through travel. Okay, well, there's so many ways to make the world a better place, and I encourage young people to find that path that's going to help them to make the world a better place for them being in it. And fortunately, young people today are very worldly. They're very aware of what's going on in the world. And many young people have very good ideas about how they can contribute to the world being better because they were in it. And really what education's doing, whether it's secondary education, university education, or graduate education, is giving young people the tools and the skills to be able to go out and make the world a better place for them being in it.
And do you have any advice for students like trying to get into CPA or actuary or even consulting? Like what are the grades, and like do you practice the exams beforehand or wait until college? Or how do you become an actuary and consulting field?
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, one of the things that I encourage people to do is to focus, okay? Pick something you want to do and then try to be the best at that, okay? And actually to try to be the best in the world at that. We've become a very global economy, a global civilization. And so it's not really good enough to be the best in Glenview at that. It's not even good enough to be the best in the Chicago area in that. You want to strive to be the best in the world at that, okay? And that takes study, that takes sacrifice, it takes practice, it takes repetition, and that's where focus allows you to do that. And it's best if people focus on others. If they focus on the needs of other people, that's how they'll get really good at meeting those needs. So those are the kinds of suggestions and tips I give people.
And then when you look for professionals to hire, do you look for ACT, GRE, or exam CPA scores, or do you look at the well-rounded resume or their interview? What is your combination formula to hire somebody?
Great. Well, you talked about exams, and there's a lot of exams out there. The two careers that I started with, actuarial science and accounting, both have exams to get into those careers. And so study habits and test taking are important for many careers.
Yes.
Law, medicine.
Yes, LSATs.
LSATs as well.
MCATs.
So I encourage people to get good at studying, get good at taking tests so that you can show your best self. Okay? But then the other thing I encourage people to do is to develop skills and to demonstrate those skills in real life situations. You talk about how I evaluate people and assess people. And the way I do that is by asking them about times when they were able to demonstrate the skills that they had. Okay, so it's not good enough to just have book knowledge and test knowledge, but to put those skills into practice. Okay, and that's what I encourage young people to do.
And basically, what is your favorite country that you traveled?
You know, in addition to the Circumnavigators Club, Melanie and I joined the Travelers Century Club, which is a club of people who've been to over 100 countries. Okay, they actually have their own list because there's 193 United Nations member states. And then the Travelers Century Club has another 140 other places that are not UN member states, like Greenland, like Hong Kong, like Taiwan, like Palestine. Okay, so they have a list of 330 of these places, and we all try to finish the list. I'm not very far. I'm at 110. Okay, I'm one ahead of Melanie, who's at 109. Oh. Okay, and so it's not about a favorite one. It's really about finding the jewels in each one. And I can tell you 110 countries and territories I've been to, I could tell you something wonderful about visiting each one of them. They all have amazing things to do, to see, and for many of them, it's the people. It's get to know the people that are there and the situation that they're in. Sometimes they're in very great situations. Other times they're in really bad situations. And yet to get to know them and how they're dealing with those adversities, how they're overcoming those challenges, how they're looking ahead to their future and making it better. Is very rewarding. So, you know, I've been in countries like Cambodia and Laos, okay, and Lebanon and Croatia that have been through some very challenging times, okay, and it's fun to get to know the people there and how they're looking ahead to the future and how proud they are of their environment, of their natural environment, of their constructed environment, of their historical sites, and let them show you that. And so that's why I love to travel.
Are you proficient in Japanese?
Skoshi nihongo wo wakarimasu.
Oh, nice.
That means I understand a little Japanese. That's
bit.
a great saying. If you use that saying, you can get quite far in Japan. Skoshi nihongo wo wakarimasu.
Oh, nice. And was your son made a route to Glenbrook schools versus Loyola Academy? Why did you choose the Glenbrook schools?
So our two sons, Andrew and Matthew, and our daughter Charlotte, all came through the educational system. They spent 5 years in Japan. 2 of them were born in the UK. Went to schools here in Glenview, and we gave them their options and their choices. The 2 boys made excellent decisions to go to Glenbrook South. It's a wonderful school. Andrew played football there. Matthew played lacrosse there. They both got started in their careers there. Okay, Andrew's in sales and Matthew is in sports broadcasting, and they both got that started at Glenbrook South. So a wonderful school there. And Charlotte went away to boarding school. She's an equestrian, and she wanted to go somewhere she could ride. So she went to Culver Academies in Indiana, and where she was an equestrian.
Great. And how did you meet your wife, Melanie?
My wife Melanie grew up here in Glenview. Our parents were friends. Our parents curled together. Okay.
Oh, wow.
Melanie was a very good curler. I was an awful curler. And Melanie's mom was injured, and they recruited Melanie to substitute on their curling team. And my mom said, "Dan, why don't you come see the Carlson's daughters curling with us?" And so that's where I met Melanie, when she was substituting curling with our parents.
Nice. Very romantic story.
Yes. A 42-pound stone is a great Cupid arrow.
And do you have any tips for, I guess, future actuaries in high school?
Well, actuarial science is a great career progression. It was a great way for me to get started because there's a huge demand for actuaries. The actuaries are the people that do the math and calculations behind pensions, behind insurance, behind risk, and these are things that we're all wrestling with as a society. And because you get this opportunity through actuarial studies to learn how to use data to make these decisions, it's a great jumping off point for many careers in data analytics. So I encourage people to consider the actuarial profession. I also got a great start in accounting, and I encourage people to consider the accounting profession. Businesses work on profit and loss statements and balance sheets, so if you understand how those work, you're well prepared for almost any business.
Are there any universities, like I understand for actual science, you can get like a master's later on, or you can go straight to like an actuary major? Like, what do you recommend? Going straight there or just getting the MBA?
Well, there's many different paths, and each one's right for the right person. I chose Drake University in part because of the actuarial program at the bachelor's level, because it enabled me to study actuarial science. Also because it sits within the business school, and I wanted a well-rounded business education as well. Other schools, actuarial programs are in the math department, and some people might like that better. So it's really finding what's right for each person.
I remember when I went to Northwestern, it was very math. It was very calculus, trigonometry, advanced math, math theory. So that was my own background.
And Northwestern was where I chose to go for my MBA because it actually is very well known for its marketing program. And that's what I felt was missing from my undergraduate training, was some marketing training. And so that's what I did at Northwestern.
Dan, can you tell me the founder of ZS Associates, like how many associates started then and how many are now?
Sure. So ZS Associates was started by two professors at Northwestern's Kellogg School, Andy Zoltners and Prabha Sinha. That's the ZS. Okay, and I was one of their students at the time. So originally there were just a handful of us. I was employee number 4. And we grew rapidly as we were helping large companies with these problems of how to use data to make smarter decisions in sales and marketing. And they would send us to their affiliates all around the world to work with them there. And so we started growing. We started an office in London that I set up, and one by one more offices. Then I moved to Tokyo and started our first Asian office there and spent 5 years there. And today we have over 14,000 employees at ZS in 35 offices in 15 countries, all using data to help companies make smarter decisions in sales and marketing and other fields like that.
And what kind of companies, like pharmaceuticals, investment banking, just regular like technological companies, like what are your big companies that you deal with?
In the early days, we were very focused on healthcare and particularly pharmaceutical companies. A lot of our early clients were pharmaceutical companies and healthcare companies. But over time, it's grown to serve many other types of companies: travel companies, airlines, hotels, high-tech companies, computer companies, software companies, manufacturing companies, and advertising companies, all kinds of organizations that use selling and marketing to reach their customers. That's really ZS's specialty.
Interesting, interesting. Thank you, Dan, for this wonderful conversation about your life, your biography, and your civic pride. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Diana. It's been a pleasure to talk with you today.
Thank you for watching Real People, Real Matters. This is Diana Tulchinsky with my guest, Dan Peterson. Please watch us again.